tour with the hope that you and your colleagues will join us for a full session at some point in the future to get a more in-depth understanding. So it's a brief awareness session with the opportunity for you to share your thoughts and ask any questions. A big thank you to Claire and South Devon and Dartmoor Community Safety Partnership for hosting this session today. We really appreciate the opportunity to share a bit about what we're doing. So a little bit about our organisation before we start. We're a UK charity which aims to reduce gaming and gambling related harm through awareness raising, education and research. We have a portfolio of evidence-based programmes and we develop and deliver training and resources for a range of groups who have influence over children and young people. The charity was established 10 years ago now, so in 2014, off the back of lived experience of our founders. So after suffering for 25 years with a gambling addiction, Alan Lockhart died by suicide in 2010 at the age of 40. His mother, Anne, a former teacher, founded the charity with her husband, Keith, and Lee Willows. And together they're determined to use education as a tool to raise awareness and help safeguard future generations against gaming and gambling harms. So before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. You guys are all on mute, so that's really, really helpful just to stop any feedback. You might want to make sure your Teams is on Do Not Disturb just to avoid any interruptions. It's great if you could identify where the chat function is because there will be an opportunity for you to join in. I also invite you to ask any questions as we go. Claire is there helpfully on hand to answer any questions as we're going along if I don't notice them. But it's also really lovely just for you to pop in your thoughts and reflections and experiences as well. There is the raise a hand function. I'm sure you're all aware of it. So if you do have a query or question, feel free to use that. And lastly, the slides are subject to copyright. So please don't take any photos or videos or screenshots. So we have four main aspirations at YGAM, and starting with raising awareness amongst young people of the potential harms of gaming and gambling. We want to start the conversation and encourage young people to speak out and ask questions in the hope of intervening earlier on and reducing the stigma that surrounds gaming and gambling harms. We also then provide resources to deliver sessions directly to children and young people. At YGAM, we train the adults that work with young people so then they can support the children and young people they work with. This just allows us to reach even more young people. We equip youth-facing professionals with the tools and information to deliver the sessions with the goal of preventing gaming and gambling-related harm. We also strongly believe that parents and families and those who support young people should have access to information and resources. So we've got a dedicated parent hub. We also offer sessions for parents and those who work in roles to support families. And finally, age-appropriate treatment. So we work closely with GamCare, who have also set up the first national young people support service, offering information, advice and support tailored specifically to the needs of children and young people. So hopefully that gives you just a bit of an overview of who we are at YGAM. And before we go into the main section of the session, I've got a couple of quiz questions to get you warmed up. So there's only two. Don't worry, they're multiple choice as well. And I am going to invite you to put your answers into the chat. It will be a moment of mayhem with quite a few of you here on the session, but we just treat it as a bit of fun. It's an opportunity just to get you thinking, make sure you know where the chat function is so you can ask any questions. So don't worry if you don't know the answer, just give it a guess. So question number one. Oh, sorry, Kim. Yeah, feel free to drop out and drop in again, although you won't be able to hear me. Try again. I'm sure you can deal with that, Claire, when you notice that one. So what percentage of 11 to 17-year-olds spent their own money on gambling in the last 12 months? Do you think it was A, 18%, B, 26%, or C, 50%? So what percentage of 11 to 17-year-olds? Pop your answer in the chat. Thank you, Louise, for getting us started. Lots of 26% coming out. Coming in now, thick and fast. Quite a variety. No one really going for the 18%. Makes sense. Great, thank you. Speedy responses. So the answer is in fact 26%. So you can give yourself a pat on the back if you got that one right. Of that 26%, 0.7% were classified as suffering gambling harms, with 1.5% at risk. So the types of gambling they're taking part in didn't feature age-restricted products. So young people are playing arcade gaming machines or betting with friends or family. A lot of youth-facing professionals approach us for support with their young people as they're betting on sports between them and playing card games for money at break times. And although 26% of young people surveyed said they'd actively gambled, 40% had been around gambling in the past 12 months. So, for example, maybe things that we don't necessarily think of as gambling, but picking lottery numbers for the National Lottery or taking part in the Grand National and betting on the horses with their families. So, question number 2. Which year was the Gambling Act published? So the Gambling Act was established to ensure that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way and to protect children and other vulnerable people from being harmed or exploited by gambling. So which out of these 3 years do you think it was brought in? A, 1945, B, 2005, or C, 2014? Feel free to pop your answers into the chat. Thank you, Louise, again, super speedy. Lots of 2005, 2014s, quite a lot of 2014s. No one going for 1945. Nobody ever goes for 1945. So the answer is, in fact, 2005. So if you put that one, you are spot on. If 2014 did ring a bell, there were some updates to the Act, but they were mostly around licensing and tax contributions. So this Act, what it did was remove the membership requirements for casino and bingo halls. It allowed bingo halls to offer rollover jackpots. Casino bookmakers and online betting sites were able to advertise on TV and radio for the first time, and it permitted UK-based companies to offer online gambling services. So hopefully that's warmed you up, made you realise where the chat function is, and hopefully feel a bit freer to add any thoughts or questions as we go. But we're going to start by briefly looking at what is meant by the term gambling. I think it's really important that we have a shared understanding of the term and how it compares to the term gambling harm. So if we think about gambling itself, it's defined as betting, gaming, or participating in a lottery. So risking money on the results of something such as a game or a horse race, hoping to make money. When we look at gambling harm specifically, which is what we're aiming to safeguard young people against, this is gambling to a degree that compromises, disrupts, or damages family, personal, or recreational pursuits. You may have previously heard the term problem gambling, but we don't use that terminology as it can have an impact on the shame and stigma on someone who's suffering. It's really interesting as well as part of gambling harm that the word family comes up there, because gambling harm doesn't just impact the individual, but everyone around them. Gambling related harms are the adverse impacts from gambling on those around the individual, and research suggests on average 6 to 10 people can be impacted by an individual's gambling. So the next slide, if you take away nothing from this session, I think this one is the most crucial because it highlights the importance and the relevance of the work we're doing. So what it shows is data from the 2023 Gambling Commission's Young People and Gambling Report. And it shows where gambling sits in relation to other risky activities. So for this report, just short of 3,500 11 to 17-year-olds were surveyed from schools in England, Scotland and Wales. So in previous years, we actually only had up to age 16. So it's great that we've got this extra data included now. So let me just talk you through what you can see. So on the left-hand side, you can see that gambling at 26% was only second to drinking an alcoholic drink amongst activities that these 11 to 17-year-olds had participated in during the last 12 months. So this puts it way above smoking cigarettes, taking illegal drugs. But for a long time, those activities have had consistent education programs. And at YGAM, we feel gaming and gambling should be discussed alongside them. The figures for gambling participation are slightly lower than last year's. They were 31% last year, which is great. And it shows the importance of increasing education on these topics and the impact that YGAM's preventative education is having as well. However, although the levels of gambling participation are slightly lower than the previous year, there are notably higher levels of participation in other risk-taking activities. So if we now take a look at the right-hand statistics, these shows that out of those activities, out of those young people who reported having gambled in the week prior to the research, 67% had also drunk an alcoholic drink and 20% had taken illegal drugs. So we can see comorbidity with gambling and other risky activities. Now, during our free sessions, we demonstrate how our resources can support with educating young people around gambling and gaming harms and help to start open up the conversations around this topic. And as I said, this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but do feel free to pop any thoughts or questions into the chat as we go. So to try and understand our young people a bit better, the Gambling Commission's report also gave us some of the reasons young people identified themselves as to why they gambled. So for 78%, it was fun. So it's these sort of online games that they're playing are designed to be fun. They want to draw people in, so more people play, and lots of children end up getting enticed. So the bright colours, the upbeat music, the exciting themes. It might just be something they're doing offline, so something sociable they're doing with friends or family. And interestingly, at 35%, the chance of winning wasn't the highest motivator for young people, although it does drive over a third of them. But 28% is something to do. So there's evidence to link gambling with escapism from trauma or day-to-day stresses. So young people choosing to gamble after a stressful or difficult day. And for nearly a fifth of young people, they wanted to take the risk, which links us back to that comorbidity in the graph and the potential to engage with other risky activities. And for 12%, because it's cool. So this could be a result of influencers on platforms such as Instagram and X showing their lavish lifestyles, funded potentially by gambling, and streaming themselves gambling on platforms such as Kick. And we look again at more detail about these sorts of streaming services as part of our training. To look at both sides, there are some reasons why children and young people said that they didn't gamble. So there was a lack of interest. For some, they recognised that it's illegal and that they're too young and that there may be future issues. So it proves again that early education is having a positive impact. For some, their parents won't allow it, and for some, it was against their religion. And we cover this in more detail in our diverse communities workshops. So when we look at external influences that cause a young person to gamble, one of the biggest factors is advertising. So TV, social media, radio, or through sport, they have a huge impact on why children and young people choose to gamble. We look at more detail into the relationship between football and gambling as part of our training, and we discuss the impact of gambling logos and how we compare to other European countries in terms of how we protect our young people. We also look at esports and the impact that this has on young people's attitude to gaming, and the links that it also has with gambling. A report by market research company Ipsos found that 96% of the 11 to 24-year-olds surveyed had been exposed to gambling in the past month. So young people are regularly seeing gambling being promoted, whether that be through sport on social media or through streamers on sites such as Twitch and Kick. There are some efforts to protect young people from being exposed to gambling advertisements. So in October 2022, the UK banned gambling adverts featuring sports and reality TV stars to try and protect under 18s and other vulnerable groups. Gambling marketing featuring stars and celebrities such as Cristiano Ronaldo, Harry Redknapp and Michael Owen are no longer allowed. And in the summer of 2020, the House of Lords called for the football gambling relationship to come to an end, but that doesn't seem to have happened just yet. When we look at social media, So using an age classifier on Twitter, or X as it's now called, researchers found clear evidence of children following and engaging with gambling-related accounts. So it was estimated that 41,000 UK followers of gambling-related accounts were likely to be under 16, and 6% of followers of traditional gambling accounts were found to be children. So a figure that increased to 17% when looking specifically at esport gambling accounts. Again, we cover esports in more detail in our training, and we offer free alumni sessions which look solely at esports if that's something that you're interested in. There's a lot of research looking into the effects of gambling advertising on social media, and Bristol University recently published a report that concluded social media platforms should only allow gambling ads on social media when users actively opt in to receive them. But when I work with young children, as I did yesterday, they tell me regularly about the pop-ups that they see, the gambling adverts that pop up regularly on their social media. Another huge influence on why young people choose to gamble is parents. So in fact, 74% of children were with their parents the first time they gambled. And lastly, peer pressure, and so gambling with friends. Gambling trends can start from a young age, and we all know how quickly trends spread in schools and amongst young people. So it's vital that we are teaching our young people about the potential harms caused by gambling and to introduce social resistance skills into education. Not to keep going on about it, but as part of our alumni sessions, we have the fantastic Sam Starsmore, who talks about his lived experience of gambling harms. And it's really interesting to hear how much of it started at that sort of teenage school kind of an age, and those sorts of trends that start at that time. So in our training, we look at advertising and legislation, but we know there's lots of factors which may influence young people, and every young person is different. So our resources explore this in more depth and allow people to have meaningful and individual conversations. So I'm going to move on very briefly from gambling and take a very quick look about some of the issues around gaming. And if you want to know more, we do cover more in our free training. So as I said, you can come and join us to learn a little bit more about that. But I'm going to start with something called microtransactions. If you're not familiar with them, they are in-app, in-game purchases that can unlock specific features or give the user special abilities, characters, or content. So they can take many forms. So it might be in-game currency. So many games use in-game currency that players can redeem against things within the game. So things to enhance gameplay, like weapons or special abilities or aesthetics, and potentially be redeemed against lives. There's things like random chances. So you might have heard of loot boxes, crates, packs. So players don't know what's in the box, but are often tempted to unlock something special. There's also things called in-game items. So they allow you to buy items within the games, and you can use real money because it takes a long time to earn the virtual currency. And then little things like expiration dates and times are used to encourage you to buy items or lose forever. So similar to a sale in DFS or Currys, to create a sense of urgency to get us to spend. The game producers use them within games to get people to spend more money, buy more lives. You might see it in things like Candy Crush. So I'm going to show you a very quick video which just sort of goes over what these microtransactions are, and then I'll go over why it's really, really important in terms of what we're talking about today in terms of gambling. So the video should automatically play. If it doesn't, feel free to try pressing play. If you don't have sound, it might be that you need to drop out and drop back in again and give that a go, but it should just play automatically. So the takeaway message, because it's not real money, it's not considered to be real gambling, but young people can end up spending a great deal of money within these games. In fact, gaming companies rely heavily on the money made by these microtransactions, more so than the money they make from selling the actual game. Some games are free and solely make their money from these microtransactions, and they're encouraging the same feelings of excitement, the same rush of adrenaline and dopamine that you might get from, say, a scratch card or other similar sort of gambling type product. So looking at why young people choose to game, there's lots of reasons, and it's important to highlight that there are lots of positives around gaming. I'm not going to go into those now, but as part of the training, we tend to celebrate it, and especially when I'm working with children and young people, I think it's really important to highlight all the really good things about gaming, because there are lots, but we also then highlight the potential harms. So for young people, it can be a form of escapism. So it's a great way to forget about the stresses of the day, a way to come home and relax, especially for young people that maybe struggle academically or socially and find school to be hard work. There's competition. So maybe for a young person who struggles with traditional sports, it gives them the sense of achievement and success. It gives them feedback on how they're improving. Exploration, so different games in different settings with new people, building new worlds and creating new storylines. It gives them a sense of autonomy, a sense of control over something, which they don't often get in their day-to-day life. To make money, so they may stream themselves playing a game or on Twitch or Kick or things like that, or they may begin competing with the hope of becoming an esports athlete, where the prize money is in the millions. And if you find the term athlete quite jarring in terms of the words esports, that is what they're called. And there are lots of colleges offering esports as a qualification. Again, we'd go into that in a bit more detail if that's something you're interested in. And a way of socializing. So for children who potentially struggle to make friends, this can be a lifeline, providing a sense of belonging. And coming back to that risk taking, so enjoying the moments of suspense in the game and the adrenaline rush. So this next slide, it goes through some gaming jargon, which you may or may not be familiar with, but in the context of gaming, I wonder if you know what they mean. With a smaller group, I would probably open this up to the chat, as I really enjoy some of the answers I get. But I think given the great size that we've got today, I'm just going to run straight through them. So the first word in terms of gaming is camping. So this is a controversial tactic usually found in multiplayer shooting games, so whereby a player stays in one place, usually hidden, and uses this unfair advantage to get more kills. The word farming in relation to gaming, so also referred to as grinding. This refers to repeatedly completing a task within a game in order to obtain certain items. So this can refer to XP, so experience points, game money, resources, or gold. Griefer, so this refers to a player in a multiplayer video game who deliberately irritates and harasses other players within the game, similar to how a troll irritates people on social media. Lag, so a symptom of slow internet or network difficulties when playing online games. If you experience lag, there'll be a delay between you pressing a button and movement on screen. Whale, so in free-to-play games, a whale refers to a player who spends a considerable amount of real-world money for in-game items. And then the last one, owned. So it's a term that you might hear children that you work with, maybe your own children, that generally when they're gloating over somebody's misfortune. So we offer these resources which go through games, how to play them, age ratings, and gaming jargon to help adults better understand the gaming world that their young people are part of. And we have a dedicated parent hub, which I will just put into the chat right now. So this is just on as part of our website. It's free to access, open for anyone to use, and it's got up-to-date information, things on gaming, things on gambling. So please feel free to go and check that out. So the next slide touches on loot boxes, which I mentioned briefly when talking about microtransactions. So these are in-game virtual items, and many companies use them as their main source of revenue. So what are the potential risks and harms of loot box purchasing? So if you're not familiar with them, potentially not aware that they can be quite harmful, have sort of gambling mechanisms within them. So the loot box market in the UK is worth an estimated £700 million, and an estimated 5% of gamers are generating half of that revenue. So a third of these fall into the category of suffering from gambling harms. So amongst gamers, 45% of those who buy loot boxes also gamble, compared to 23.5% who make no purchases. Greater loot box purchases are associated with males of a younger age, maybe with lower income and lower educational attainment, so possibly a group who are less able to afford to purchase them. 1 in 4 spend over £100 over the course of a game. 31% can't keep track of their spending, and 33% don't feel in control of their spending. 24% reported feelings of addiction to loot boxes, and 44% associated with them with feelings of anger and frustration. One 14-year-old, as part of the study, took his parents' card without permission and spent £300 on loot boxes, and had this feeling that they just couldn't stop, even though they knew it was wrong and they shouldn't do it. They just couldn't stop. So again, those sorts of links with those sort of gambling behaviours. There's lots of evidence to link and suggest a link between loot boxes and gambling. They're being considered in the Gambling Review, and they're a topic of much debate. So they're a really important point of discussion with young people, as they're not obviously gambling products. So just to sort of sum up and really highlight the importance of safeguarding young people against gaming and gambling harms, this next slide looks at the potential long-term consequences of gambling harm. So often young people think about the short-term consequences and tend to only think about maybe the financial implications, but it can have a serious long-term impact on many different areas of their life. So gambling can seriously have long-term impacts on relationships. So, for example, someone experiencing gambling harm can find it difficult to keep friends. So they become quite secretive. They don't take part in activities that they once enjoyed because they're choosing to spend all their time gambling. Family breakdowns are common. So a breakdown of marriage, relationship, wider family. And for a young person, they may encounter difficulties maintaining relationships in the longer term. Feelings of guilt and shame can also cause a loss of community attachment and a reduced ability to make friends. So when I'm working with young people and talking to them about this key area, I always come back to the fact that I really want them to talk about this with their peers, that they've got work to do to try and break down the stigma that's attached with gambling harms, because it can happen to anyone. Gambling harms can have a long-term impact on an individual's health, so it can lead to food poverty, as the individual suffering may have no money to feed themselves or their family. An individual may have a poor diet, so choosing to grab quick snacks and ready meals as priority is given to gambling, and they may be gambling late into the night, so not getting enough sleep. There's the comorbidity, which we've mentioned, which these are the risky behaviours or addictions, and they hugely impact on an individual's health. And gambling addiction leads to mental ill health, which can lead to physical ill health. Possibly the consequences that we think of first when we think of gambling harms, the financial consequences. So a loss of money, loss of commodities or assets. So maybe pawning or selling items to fund gambling. And again, I always sort of talk to those young people I work with about telltale signs of having a friend that's got a really nice pair of trainers one day, haven't got them the next, has a really nice watch one day, hasn't got it the next, and spotting out for those sorts of signs. A lack of understanding around the value of money. So it can result in paying back debts or for many years. So the use of things like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin can really devalue money and sort of the understanding around money. And living standards can be affected. So a person being unable to obtain credit or finance for mortgages or cars. So again, my line manager, who's part of our charity, due to lived experience, he can't get a mortgage, so he has to rent. So these things that young people maybe don't consider in the short term. And an important aspect for us to be really aware of as professionals supporting young people is the impact on development. So there's the reduced academic performance at school or college, which can impact life chances, the inability for that individual to risk assess effectively, and potentially undertaking a legal activity to fund their gambling. So it's not just one part of a person's life that can be impacted by gambling harms, and it's not just in the short term. And I think that it's so important to get young people thinking and talking about, because it has a huge knock-on effect on an individual's life now and in the future. So I'm here today to spread awareness and to hopefully encourage any adults that work with young people to undertake our free City and Guilds training. So anyone that completes the full training then has access to our full bank of free PSHE resources, which they can use with their young people. So we've got specific resources for primary and secondary. It goes from Key Stage 2 all the way to Key Stage 5. So I was working with 18 and 19-year-olds yesterday. All of the resources that we have follow a thematic spiral map, so they build on the skills, on key skills, critical thinking skills as well. They've all mapped to the PSHE curriculum, the scheme of work. So we're trying to reduce workload for teachers, youth workers, because it's things that are needed to be taught, and they're there ready-made for them to use. All of the PowerPoints that we provide are interactive and editable, so people can sort of cherry pick. They can use the scheme in its entirety, or they can cherry pick. We provide data resources so that we've done all of the research for those people, so they don't have to go in and do it, and all of it can be printed and easily taken and used in their setting. We've got specific youth work resources as well, and they can be delivered in a variety of settings. So it doesn't have to just be classroom based. It can be small group based. It can be outside. We have football clubs that use them outside when they're doing their sports, and in between burpees you do so much and provide so much information and things like that. So there's lots of different ways that you can deliver the content. Now, I feel like I've said it a lot, but as part of the full training, we do go through the resource platform in its entirety, but I just wanted to give you a real snapshot of some of the resources without necessarily sharing the resource platform itself. So all of this is just an example, and it might be quite small. You don't need to see it. It just gives you this idea of what each key stage has in terms of a long-term plan and where the lessons can fit in. Each one shows you where it maps to the curriculum. So it says this lesson hits this objective. Each lesson comes with the statistics, the links, all of the research, so it can be easily used and picked up and run with. And each lesson comes with a lesson plan, so starter, main and plenary. And this goes, as I said, from Key Stage 2 all the way up to Key Stage 5. All of the lessons come alongside with PowerPoints. They're editable. You can cherry pick the bits that you want to use and work with your young people. They've got a range of different activities, group activities, things that you can then create. And really importantly, every single session signposts young people to where they can go for support. And also there's I think I'll pop it in a minute in the chat where you can go and find on our website as well, where you can access support as well. There's lots of different short little activities. So if you're working in smaller groups, there's loads of different 5, 10 minute, 20-minute tutorial type sessions, depending on your setting, or if you're working with young people, or if you know teachers that are different sort of scenarios that bring it to life, that young people can then discuss. And that's, again, coming back to one of the most important things, needing to talk about it and be open about it and start to discuss it. So if you do choose to join us on one of our sessions, you can expect that we'll go into a bit more detail about why young people game and gamble. We've got lots of different research which we explore and go through. How to spot the signs of gaming and gambling related harm. So again, really important things to look out for with the young people that we work with. Practical tips on how to support young people, so conversation starters and ways in which you can go about starting those conversations. Access to all the resources, all of them are written by qualified teachers, youth workers, and at the end of it, you walk away with a City and Guilds certification, so it's part of CPD, it can add to that, and again, all free. So we have sessions for any adult that works with or looks after children and young people. So our aim is to reach as many adults working or supporting or looking after young people as we can. The more adults that we can give this information to, the more children we can safeguard against gaming and gambling harm. So by giving everyone this information, we hope to reduce the stigma around gaming and gambling harm, so making it easier for young people to speak up and seek support sooner. So YGAM are aiming to prevent through early intervention and education, but we recognise that by having these conversations with young people that they may need further support. So I am going to pop into the chat. I haven't been keeping up with the chat. I'm assuming the lovely Claire has been doing that, but I'll pop that into the chat over there. So there's lots of different places that you can go for support, and on the website, again, free to access, there's loads of links to organisations that offer advice and support with gaming and gambling, apps and banks that can block gambling transactions, and fantastic charities that support with mental health. So if you or your colleagues would like to learn more, you can book onto an open session. So through our website, you can choose the session that you think suits you best and at a time that suits you. I'll just pop that in. You can log in and do that. But alternatively, if you've got a group of people that want to do a session, then we can do a bespoke session for educators, but also for parents at a time of your choosing. And we can do that either face-to-face or online. So do let me know if that's something of interest. My email address is up there, but I'll also pop it into the chat as well, just so it's in there. So do feel free to take a photo of that slide as well. You know, we really do rely on word of mouth to help spread word of our charity. We're on all of the social media platforms there, and the QR code will take you directly through to being able to book. Myself and Claire will stick around. We factored in a little bit of time in case anybody wanted to ask any questions, wanted to just share any thoughts, but before I pop the last QR code up, I hope that you feel a little bit better informed about what YGAM does as a charity, and have maybe taken away a couple of things just to think about when it comes to gaming and gambling harms and how to safeguard our young people. So Claire, this is the QR code that you popped to me. I think that just takes you through to a little bit of feedback, and if you would like to get in touch, you can leave your details there, so feel free to scan that if that's something of interest. But that's really it from me. So I just want to again say thank you so much for coming along. If you do want to stick around and ask any questions, myself and Claire will be here for a little bit, but otherwise I'll pass you back over to Claire.
Thank you so much. It's really enlightening. I've also popped a link to that feedback form in the chat along with the QR code, which is coming through now. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves, pop your hands up, whatever you feel most comfortable doing. I'm just going to stop the recording.